on eBay, you know, and it's just amazing what you can buy on eBay. But there was a time we weren't supposed to do that, you know, and stuff. So what this teaches us is what are we leaving behind for 7 generations? And this is a reminder of 7 generation thinking, because when I go and pick my sweetgrass, I can't pick the first one. I have to leave it behind for the first generation after me. I go to the second one and I pray, you're for the second one, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Then I pick the 8th one. Mm-hmm. Then I know it's real medicine because I've honored and left behind. But not everybody does that. But that's what we have to start doing, you know, is start thinking about that 7 generation thinking. All those issues about fracking, for example, you know, the biggest understanding is we're taught that if we can't take care of what's in our generation, the water, the earth, the air, then we have no business bothering the water that doesn't belong to us, which is the one underneath. You know, that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the 7th generation. There's supposed to be clean water for them, but if we go ahead of that, they're not going to have any water. And I've had visions in my fasting of the ants taking me, trusting me. Go ahead, we want to show you something. And of course you're afraid, but you're in your dream state, and I'm going, I can't fit through that little hole. No, we have to show you something. Chkui, chkui. You know, so they're talking to me in my language. And I'm going in, it's getting darker and colder as I'm going, following these ants. And they finally show me this place, and the little people are there, and the little people are, he said, we can't even cry, we have not enough water in our bodies. We have no more tears left, you know, so you have to do ceremony, you have to do water ceremony, you have to do all this. So when I woke up, and I always wake him up and he'll complain about it. Guess what, I gotta do the ceremony. Elder Charles Solomon, 2010, Elder Charles Solomon was in his 80s at the time from Kingscliff First Nations, our medicine man. And he was so worried about the flooding in Fredericton because in 2010 there was water going all the way on Queen Street, all the way up to King Street. It was really bad flooding. He calls me up in the middle of the night. He goes, Metzel, Dachina Jimmy Alden. He goes, get your regalia on. We have to go to the head pond, which is Magdeburg. So middle of the night, you do what your elder does, you know. He was even outside waiting for me. You know what I mean? I didn't even have a chance to get in the house. He was out there ready, coming in. And normally I help him in. He was so anxious to go do ceremony. No, we gotta hurry up. We gotta hurry up before the sun comes up. I said, okay. So we go to the head pond, and when we go there, he's saying, I'm gonna stay here with my smudge bowl. And this is actually his smudge bowl. A little piece broke off, but I need to glue it on, but this was Elder Charles' smudge bowl. And he always used either a muskrat, you know, to hold it on. And so he was holding this, and he's smudging this, and he goes, you know, go by the, you know, go down to the water's edge. And I'm going there with my pipe, and I'm watching my step because it's slippery and it's dark. We're not allowed to use a flashlight. But anyways, I get there, and the water is rushing, you know. And he goes, Deb milk, which means step in it. And I'm going, Deb milk on? You know? But I'm going, that's gonna sweep me away. So I'm really grounding my feet in, and I'm going in, and it's cold. And as soon as I started to light my pipe and started to pray in my language, I got so emotional because the water actually, you know, kind of slowed down. It actually got warm. And I realized, oh my goodness, this is a miracle. I've never ever felt this since my fast, you know, that oneness. But I apologized to her. I said, I'm so sorry we're polluting you. I'm so sorry we're not bringing our newborn babies to wash, you know, so you can wash our babies. And I'm making all these promises to our great-grandmother River. And I'm going to bring back Wolastoq. We're not going to call it St. John anymore. We're going to, you know, and I'm on and on and on. Anyways, when we were done, apparently what was happening, there was traffic, because by then light was coming, and it's on the Mactaquac Dam, and people were stopping. They thought I was committing suicide. And so they went to the other, you want us to go get her out of the water, sir? No, leave her alone, she's praying. And of course the people that stopped go, she's praying? And here we just get sandbags. We never think about praying. Thank you, you know. So all that was going on. I'm done with the ceremony. I come back up and I'm so elated. And I'm taking off my wet moccasins, and the elder, he always would say, you did a good job, you know, 'cause that was the praise you want from your elder, right? And then this eagle came right up, and I thought it was going to actually land on my car, and I'm telling the elder, Jibat? There were two of them, and he goes, I don't have to see him. I know they like what we did, you know. That's vision. That's seeing beyond what's in front of us. You know what I mean? He didn't have to look. He already saw that. That's what our elders are capable of. All of you elders, you have that gift because you get to see things that don't need explanations. You know what I mean? And that's what we look forward to, is being those kind of elders that have that vision, you know, and stuff. So we honor our elders, but we're starting to forget about them. Even my own people are starting to put them in homes now, and that worries me because that's not what we were supposed to do. They took care of us, we're supposed to take care of them, you know, or at least make it comfortable for them. For me, I worry about them going to a place if they don't have their language, because that happened to one of my elders recently. She was in her 90s, and her family had a hard time watching her because she had Alzheimer's. And they put her in the home. She didn't last over 2 weeks because when her relatives would go visit, she would say, what are these white people doing in my house? You know? And she never heard her language, so they never told her where she was. They made her think that this was still her house, you know, and so it was really difficult and stuff. But we got into the car, we got back to Kingsclear, it's only about 5-minute drive. He turns the radio up and it says the water's receding down below River Jemsek, that the water was receding. And he pokes me, see? And that's the power of ceremony. That's the power of our responsibility. How we can change things is that trust, that spirit, you know. Because spirits can heal. Our bodies is what's hurting us. You know what I mean? But if we're willing to feed our spirits, and feeding it is ceremony. Another way is kindness. Another one is never complaining. Never complaining. Imagine the reaction of and this experiment was done. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I'm going to have to find out. Maybe some of you have already saw that experiment, where they took a jar of water in one room and they spoke gently to it. And when it froze, it was all smooth. Then in another room, there was anger and raised voices, and that water had cracks and noise on it. So if water reacts that way, and we already know air reacts that way. That's why we were never allowed to raise our voices. So when those new baby books came out that you have to be stern to your child and raise your voice, that was totally against our culture, because we never ever raised our voices, not even in creation, you know, and stuff. And so that's why now we have a generation of children who've been hollered at, and they're angry, you know, and they holler back, you know, and stuff. So for us, it's a generational thing, and the spirit part is missing, and so we have to regain the spirit part. So that's the other, you know, the other part. So that's what this is, and of course, I have a bowl of water here, and once the pipe comes back, I'm going to pass this around because I just want you to just honor emotion, and I think this is what society is lacking in, because in my language, when we cry, I remember when newborn babies were crying, elders would come and they would actually take a tear from a baby and make the sign of the cross. That's how sacred they felt that a baby's tear was, because we believe they just came from the spirit world. They're one of our ancestors. They're DNA of those ancestors. And so we nurtured them to be these precious gifts. And so, but we have to teach them how to cry as well, because if we tell our children, stop your crying, be a big boy, be a big girl, then what we're saying is, I can't honor your emotion. I don't have time to hold you or listen to you. It's silly. Grow up. You're 7. You shouldn't be crying. When we do that to our children, that generation that's so vulnerable, they're not going to know how to handle a breakup at high school when their girlfriend breaks up with them. I'm dealing with so many suicides, And I'm doing it. I won't turn my back, as difficult as it is, but it worries me that I have 12-year-olds that don't want to live because they're having a hard time in school, or they're having a hard time with a parent, or there's an addiction issue in the family. And so emotions are very important, so we have to honor our own emotions so that we can honor other people's emotions. So that way they don't close their, and this is how I explain it. If you were told as a child to hold your emotion, then you lock it up. That hurt is still there, it wasn't dealt with. 2 weeks later, something else happens. Oh, another pain. Well, I'm going to lock that in there too. Eventually, you've got all these locks. You can't find the key. You're cold-hearted. You don't care. You don't want to listen. You don't, doesn't matter. You're just going to cover up that pain. And that's what's happening. And so what we have to do is unlock one key at a time, and deal with one little thing at a time, not all of it all at once. And that's why, for us, we do pipe ceremonies, we do healing songs, we do psychologies, we do sacred fires. When we have a death in our community, people ask, why are you bringing your family into the house? There's a funeral home. But for us, we have to, that's that person's last gift to us, is to bring us together as a community in time of need, so that the family that's leaving aren't left alone. And so it's that person's last gift. And so we have to honor that last gift and go to the house, whether we're uncomfortable or not. And so for 4 days, we bring food. There'll be a sacred fire. And at the sacred fire, there's a protocol. There's a protocol to the sacred fire. Is you can't raise your voice. You can't put your cigarette butts in it or garbage in it. So tobacco is there and cedar, and people are offering into the fire. After the day of the funeral, I'm usually called in to go do a letting go ceremony for the body. And that's just to say your body has served its purpose. It brought the community together. Your family is feeling good because they didn't have to worry about cooking or anything like that. And thank you for this gift. Now you don't have to worry about it. Now you don't have to see your family struggle. Now you don't have to hear the complaints. Now, and you just go through all the body parts. And I says, now you're free to go as a spirit, and we do that for the family, and I do it so the family can hear, not to carry on the burden long after the person has been buried. And so then we do a song, and the song, we sing a song for it. And so that's what, and that's what we do, is that letting go aspect of it. And it's really important because when people don't know how to deal with that pain, and they hold back their tears, then it comes back at a later time, and it's harder then, and stuff to deal with. So that's why that water that's going around is all the emotions, to honor all the emotions, so that, for example, if a child threw a fit, and you send them to their room, just go back and say, I know you probably think I'm the meanest mom, because I'm sending you to them, but I want you to feel your pain because that's part of life, and pain is okay, but we have to learn how to balance it, so that you don't have pain every day. You're going to have fun times too, but pain is part of it. That way we're preparing them how to balance an emotion, and that way they can make better decisions, oh, I'm going to do this because this is what makes me feel good, and that's not a good way to do it and stuff, So those are the kind of ceremonies that we're teaching. So and it's important for young people to have that transition from being a child to stuff. So I know I'm probably going way out. I'm sorry about that. That's why I told him, I said, you should go first because you get me going. I come from a storytelling background, and I think I want to. But that's what all of these, now when we smudge, and I will smudge at the end before everybody leaves, and when we smudge, it's that idea. See, we use 4 different medicines when we smudge. We use sweetgrass in the morning, we use sage in the midday, we use what we call a birch bark fungus, that one that grows in the back of the tree. We use a little bit of that when the sun sets, and then we use cedar when the night comes. So when we bring them all together, it's to honor Creator just for today. Teach me how to make good decisions for others and then myself. you know. Teach me how to deal with the difficult things that I'm facing, or ideas or thoughts or decisions I have to make that are difficult. Just for today. Don't ask for tomorrow, because we're always told that's where stress comes from, is when we're using up time before we're gifted it. So we can't use tomorrow. We have to just be grateful for today, and that's what that ceremony does, is just for today. Teach me how to think and make better decisions. Just for today, teach me how to use my eyes in a good way so that I don't complain, or I don't see something I don't like, you know. Or if I do, teach me how to honor the good of that. You know what I mean? So it's that balance we see. You listen. We're all, and especially for children, I would say, you have to listen to the teacher in school. You can't be talking in the classroom, because that's why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You know, you have to listen more, because that's what we were told when we were in a storytelling family. We weren't allowed to say, what did you say happened to that bear that went? We had to wait until the next day for the questions, but we had to really learn to listen. Because if you interrupted and asked, then you would have, then the flow of the story would change. And so you never wanted to interrupt the way the flow of the story. So it taught you to be a better listener and make sure you don't miss out on anything, and be a good listener and don't be distracted, you know. And so listening to 2 sides of the story, you know, listening to creation, not just human noise. And that's what's happening to babies. I know in my observation and working with babies is babies are really distracted, and there's a lot of human noise in their homes today. There's not too much silence in homes for babies to rest. So when moms put their babies in front of the TV all day, you know, not all day, but you know what I mean, while they're doing something, they don't realize that baby's brain is so little, and these subliminal messages from the television are entering this child's thinking, and they wonder, why is there attention deficit disorder? Why is there hyperactivity? It's because of that noise. You know, there's too much noise, you know, and so that's why we're promoting silence in the rooms, outdoors. We're bringing babies outside now actually to go listen to the trees and, you know, those kind of, and smells and so on and so forth. And then we bring the smoke to our nose, and all these different smells, so like sage, cedar, they all have different smells, and it's to awaken your, what we call your senses, you know, and that's why it's called aromatherapy. You know, so when we were in sweat lodges and it's dark, people go, oh, what's that smell? What's that smell? And so so I always tell people I'll be using this in the sweat lodge and this. That way when you smell it in the dark, you'll know which medicine I'm using. And then we bring the smoke to our mouth so that we learn how to give praise with the voices that we've been gifted with, as opposed to insults. We're taught not to gossip. We're taught, even when we hear gossip, I can't hear this, or you walk away, you know, because if you're putting your ear to gossip, it's going to affect you one way or the other. You know, you're either going to feel bad, or you might even agree, or something like that. So you're not supposed to do that, because you're making a judgment without that person being here. So it's wasted energy. So you're supposed to walk away from that. And so you praise. And that's why we say, if you start your day, instead of, oh, shucks, I gotta go to work, you say, oh, thank goodness I have purpose, I have a job, you know. Oh no, today the electric bill is due. At least you have a home, you have a mortgage, you have a roof over your head, you have transportation. So rather than complain about all those things, and I know for students it's really hard, you know what I mean, because finances are so itsy-bitsy, you know, but give gratitude for the experience and the privilege that's going to be gifted you as you sacrifice in your young life for what you want. You know, you will be rewarded, you know, but don't give up. You know, that's it, because sometimes I can't do this, I can't afford it, I can't do this. That's what praise is. So just say, Creator, thank you for this day. I get to go and learn something. I get to go and meet somebody. We bring the smoke to our hearts so that we know we love all of creation. In that same way I felt for that wolf. The fear that I had for that wolf the first year, 4 years later, I have a beautiful vision and memory of those 2 wolves coming to me. And now that I know Wolf is a teacher of loyalty, so there's a whole lot. So it's loving all of creation. We bring the smoke to our hands so that we as humans can offer service, whether it's writing a letter complaining about pollution, whether it's carrying, like we carried signs on our march. We had what we call a silent march from the Legislative Assembly, and we marched to the church where I had a priest waiting to bless the participants, and it's being community minded. It's being that giver. It's being that cooking for a family that they're having difficulties, especially in this harvest. Volunteering. Volunteering is so good. If you're going to feed spirit, volunteer. It's a good way to feed spirit. Is volunteer. We bring the smoke to our feet so that we honor Earth Walk. When babies are carried, you were a baby, you weren't walking yet, so you were carried. Now that you walk, you're supposed to carry someone else or something else. You know what I mean? A responsibility or something like that. And so we bless our feet. We thank Creator for our experiences. So tonight when I go home, when I take my moccasins off, I pat the bottom of my feet and I said, thank you, Creator. Today I walked among my ancestors because the reason we were late, my sister's monument, my sister passed away last year, and her monument was supposed to be delivered today, and they never delivered it, so we kept going back and forth to the cemetery, and then we ended up doing a ceremony for all the ones who were laying there. So my sister gave me that purpose. Her monument didn't show up, but I was able to go and visit the ancestors that were there and did ceremony for them. So I'm going to thank my Earth Walk for that, for being there today, because it made me feel good. And then, of course, the elders, they'll bless in front. And that's to honor all those 7 generations that we carry their DNA. And don't forget that DNA. Don't forget it, honor it. That's why some of us are better singers, some of us are better knitters, some of us are better creators, in writing or whatever it is, or bakers. It's in our DNA, and stuff. And so we honor that. And so we bless behind us. And the reason we do that is each and every one of us has a responsibility to leave something behind for that next generation yet to be born. I have something difficult to do, and that's why I'm passing the water. Friday, there's a baby that was just born to a mother that's on, she's a drug mom. And the baby is going through withdrawals. And the baby's been there a month. And so the grandmother, I said, Imelda, could you go and do a ceremony for my granddaughter? Because it doesn't look like she's going to survive because her withdrawals are so severe because her mother was on methadone, and stuff. So, but it's difficult. And I know those babies are coming here for a reason. Creator doesn't say, let's send a few of these babies that aren't going to be okay. It's for us to, okay, that's what I'm going to ask the baby. Teach me. I'm not here to teach you. You're here to teach me. And I'm here to learn what can I do to help babies like you, be fewer and fewer. Or what am I supposed to do? And that's what we're supposed to do, So that water that's going around, I'll be offering it out here. You're thinking, out here when we're done with it. It's those kind of things we have to take time for, I brought a bell. Because what I did, I couldn't figure out how am I going to honor 1,600 missing and murdered Aboriginal women across Canada. So what I did is I went to the churches. I called the Catholic Women League. I called the churches. Who has bells? I realized not too many churches have church bells anymore. So I asked for the north side churches in Fredericton every Wednesday for the month of October at 11 o'clock to ring their bells for 10 minutes so that the people that are hearing the bells to just stop and say a prayer to a family of a murdered and missing woman, And then south side churches are doing their bells at 5 o'clock. And so, again, people are already talking about it, and I've had people that are writing me and thanking me, and people who sent me pictures, we were in our red shawls today, etc. And it's that kind of awareness. And when we do things like that, that's the gift that you are, that compassion. You're feeding that spirit that you are. So I'm just going to ring a little bell. For the ones who went before us, teach us how to walk this earth walk, to make it, what we call walking in beauty. That's what the Navajo would call their walk, is walking in beauty. This is a prayer to awaken the spirit in each and every one of us, so that, just like when we were children and hearing the school bells, you knew you had to get to the school, before while the bell was ringing. But this is just a wake-up call for your spirits. I'm going to end there, and I'm going to let David take over.
Yes.
But I do have, when it's all done, I will sing a song, and we'll do a ceremony before we go, before we pass some stuff. I brought the sage, I brought all, and the pipe I think is coming. Yep, thank you. Feel the medicine on it, eh? It's nice and warm. Yeah.
Well, I get a little more time than I usually get. Maybe 5 more minutes in other sessions. She came from she mentioned she came from a storytelling family, and her uncle was the best storyteller in Tobique back in the mid-50s, late 50s. And I used to go there almost every single night just to listen to his stories. I used to go there every single night just to see her as well. Matter of fact, we were together in middle school, and then when Perth decided that they didn't want us to go to their school anymore, she went to New York, and I went to Massachusetts to finish my high school and so on. And this is where we separated for quite a few years. But then we reconnected in 87, and we went together again since then. So, talk about life going around the surface. She talked about fasting. She started fasting back in '93, I believe. And before she left, she said, "I'm going to be gone for 5 days." And this was, she was going to Ontario, and I thought, well, I can handle 5 days, no problem. So I can support that. And but she called me after 5 days. She said, "We didn't start until yesterday." So that meant she was gone for 10 days. So she fasted for 4 days. I fasted for 10 days. So by the time she came back, I lost about 15 pounds. What happened to you? I decided to go on my fast. My first fast was actually 5 years ago. I decided that I wanted to connect the way that she has been connecting with the ancestors. And when I decided to go on the fast, well, as you said, the first year is 1 day, second year is 2 days, third year is 3, and then 4 days. So the first year, she knows that at the time, I drank a lot of Tim Hortons coffee. So I would have, first thing in the morning, I would have Tim Hortons coffee, extra large. Before the end of the morning, I would have Tim Hortons coffee, extra large. After lunch, I would have another extra large. So by 4 o'clock, I'm all wired up, So she knew that. So she said, "If I were you, 1 week before your 1 day fast, if I were you, I'd start drinking coffee. With the caffeine, you would have withdrawals from caffeine, and you will suffer." And I said, "Oh, geez, I'm a strong Maliseet warrior. I can handle it." So I kept on drinking my coffee all week. So that Friday evening, we went to our sacred site, and I was okay overnight. I was all right, and did my prayers to our Creator. And next morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning, I started feeling withdrawals. talk about painful. I had major headache, felt nauseated, I felt weak. And then of course, then she told us even before that, she said, well, anytime you have any questions, or if you have to offer tobacco to a sacred fire, come to a sacred fire and offer your tobacco, and then if you have any questions, you can ask me then. So I said, well, geez, I have to go. I have to go to the sacred fire. I have to offer my tobacco, and then I did that. And after I offered my tobacco, then I told her I'm having a rough time. I'm having this withdrawal, this major headache, and all she said to me was, I thought you were a strong Maliseet warrior. She didn't feel sorry for me. The power of ceremony. She mentioned the power of ceremony. I felt that power. Last year I did my 4-day fast, and on the third day, I believe, I started getting this immense hunger pain, thirst, and my mouth was so dry. And I'm thinking, geez, I'm not sure if I can handle one more day, just one more day. I'm not sure if I can handle this. And then I remembered my elder, Charles Solomon, my elder telling me that if you ever have hunger pain or that thirst, if you have difficulties, go to the birch tree. Go to the birch tree and ask the spirit of the birch tree to help you, because spirits have power. Spirits have healing power that you can draw upon. And he said, make sure you touch the birch tree, and then you ask the birch tree to help you to transfer the healing power from the tree to your spirit. So I remember that. So I went to the birch tree. Of course, I was surrounded by birch trees in my sacred site. I went to the birch tree and I touched the birch tree, and then I started praying. I asked the tree to give me the healing power that I needed to be able to go another day without food and water. And I prayed and hung into the birch tree for at least 15 minutes, praying, asking for that energy to be transferred from that tree to myself, to my spirit. And then after I prayed, I went back to my tent. Sure enough, maybe about half hour later, 45 minutes later, my hunger went away. My thirst went away. All of a sudden I had this energy. The energy I didn't have that morning, but I had it. Now, I fully realize now when elders tell us you have to connect with creation. I know what that means now. When I heard that before, I didn't have a full, deep understanding of what that meant until that day when I took the time to ask the birch tree to help me to transfer that healing power to me, so I'll be able to go another day, no food, no water. And now I know what connection means. I felt it. I was part of it. I'm connected with creation, connected with all of creation and the spirits of all of creation. So that was, to me, that was a powerful, powerful message that I learned from that experience. And we hear those kinds of stories from others who are also fasting with us. And it's such a wonderful feeling to be able to know that you can connect your spirit with spirits of others within creation as well. So that's my experience with fasting. I'm going to give you a very short version of the history of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoq, and of course the Pasquale people. I'm not sure how much time.
It's 8:45.
And we're done at 9?
That's the schedule. I'm sure
Okay.
people can maybe stay a bit longer, but
Okay,
I know
I'll give
you guys have to get back to Fredericton as well.
That's right, yes. Very quick version. And then I assume some might have some questions. My timeline. Usually, when you look at historical accounts of any society, you'll have a linear timeline. You have a starting point here and an end point here, and then of course historians will describe events within those 2 points. My timeline is different than your typical linear timeline that historians use. My timeline is consistent with the worldviews of our ancestors, the worldview that Imelda just shared with you. My timeline is in a circle. If you just imagine on the eastern part of the circle, that's of course that's the beginning of our society. It's the beginning of, this is when the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoq, Passamaquoddies, and Penobscots came upon Mother Earth and then started their society within our areas, our traditional territories. And of course for the Wolastoq and for the Passamaquoddies, this is their traditional territory here, St. Stephen, St. Andrews, and so on. This is their traditional territory. For the Wolastoq, it's all of this St. John River Valley, or my ancestors call that Wolastoq area. So we believe from our creation stories that we originated here. There was no migration. As teachers tend to use, when they explain the origins of First Nations people, they tend to use the migration theory, Bering Strait theory. They would say, oh, they started in Africa, crossed Asia, crossed the strait called the Bering Strait, and then from that point on, they migrated to different parts of North America, South America, and so on. That's the theory that's being used in the public school system. I usually ask teachers not to use that theory because that theory now has proven to be wrong. You know, it's like any theory. You know, theories have their deficiencies. So I ask teachers not to use that because we have to share with the students the stories of our ancestors. So what are those stories? Well, those are creation stories. Those creation stories tell us that we originated here in Wabanaki territory. So in the eastern direction, we have the beginning of the Wabanaki nations, the societies. From the eastern direction to the southern direction, we have what I call the age of independence. This is when the Wabanaki nations had total control of their own lives. They were sovereign nations. There was no such thing as Department of Indian Affairs. There was no such thing as Aboriginal Affairs. They had nations, they had laws, they had education system, they had a political system, they had a social system, they had a legal system, they had a health system. They were all in place during the Age of Independence, before contact with European settlers. And then on the southern direction is what I call contact period. And of course, for the Wolastoq, for the Wabanakis, first contact was 1604, Champlain came upon Wabanaki territory. So we had contact, and then for a very short period of time, maybe less than 100 years, is what I call the age of reciprocity. Now, within this age of reciprocity, this is when the Wabanaki nations were, and the European nations, like first the French, and then later on the English, they established reciprocal relations. They were trading with one another. They coexisted. They lived in peace and harmony with one another for that period of time. So, and it was during this time also that my ancestors made important contributions during this contact period. This is when, and this is according to the historical accounts. It's been reported that if it wasn't for the Wabanaki people, the fur trade in this area would not have survived. It was only because of the involvement of Wabanakis that the fur trade flourished in what is now called Atlantic Canada. It's also reported that because of at that time, Champlain, when he was exploring the coastline of Wabanaki territory, he noticed that there was some major rivers, and then he wanted to explore those river systems as well within what is now called New Brunswick, and of course later on Nova Scotia. So, of course, he couldn't take his huge ships and explore the interior river system of New Brunswick now. So my ancestors, because of the accommodations that they made, they continued to help Champlain to explore the interior, and then they used the birch bark canoe to be able to allow Champlain to continue to walk the Wolastoq, maybe not all the way up, but at least to explore Wolastoq, now called the St. John River, to explore other rivers within New Brunswick. So that's a contribution that allowed Champlain to provide more information to his superiors back in France. It's also reported that medicines, when Champlain was stranded at St. Croix Island, he reported in his journal that it wasn't for the Wabanaki people, his men would have died. He said, because at that time there was no food supply, but his plan was to go back to France maybe in September, late September, and then come back the following spring to explore more of Wabanaki territory. But he was so involved in exploring Wabanaki territory that by the time he decided that he wanted to go back to France, it was too late. So he ended up being stranded at St. Croix Island, and then he had no food supply. So he didn't have any medicines. So in his journal, he recorded that the Wabanakis came to his site. They brought food, they brought medicines, and because of that, his men survived the winter months. They also made shelters for the men as well. So some men died, but the majority survived because of the generosity of the Wabanaki people. There's more contributions, but I know the time is starting to, we're getting late. So we have Age of Reciprocity. That didn't last too long. And then after settlement continued on Wabanaki territory, and then as settlers outnumbered the Wabanakis, first the French settlers and then later on the English settlers, they outnumbered the Wabanakis. And of course this is when the relationship changed between the Wabanakis and the Francophones and the French authorities and the English authorities. So instead of having reciprocal relationships, now they have a relationship based on destroying everything that was Wabanaki. They believed, because of this colonial mentality at the time by the English, was that the English thought that they were superior in terms of the language that was spoken. They thought they were superior in terms of everything else, everything material. All material things they compared with the Wabanakis, and they came to the conclusion that, well, we are superior because look at our technology. They're inferior. So because of that mentality, they adopted and imposed the policy of assimilation on the Wabanaki people. They wanted to civilize the Wabanakis into English colonial society. So this is what I call the Age of Destruction pre-Confederation, because the English colonial authorities, after the French-English War over Wabanaki territory, the English became the dominant force in Wabanaki territory. Then they started adopting policies with regards to dealing with Wabanaki people. And the most destructive policy, of course, was a policy of assimilation, assimilating them into English colonial societies. It was also during this time, during the Age of Destruction, was destroying language, destroying traditions, destroying everything that was Wabanaki. It was also during this time that the English colonial authorities also adopted a policy of genocide. The English colonial authorities allowed settlement to move into Wabanaki land. The Wabanakis, of course, resisted. They didn't want to lose their traditional territories. So when they resisted, of course, the English colonial authorities, they did not appreciate the Mi'kmaq, the Wolastoq, and the Penobscots, the Passamaquoddies fighting back, because they were fighting back to protect their territory, their land, and so on. So the first English colonial authority to adopt the policy of genocide was Governor Shirley in 1744. He was the first to issue a proclamation, a scalping proclamation against the Wabanaki people. In this proclamation, he offered rewards to have a male scalp, a female scalp, and of course a scalp from a child. For a male scalp, he offered 25 pounds. For a female scalp, he offered 15 pounds. For a scalp from a child, he offered 5 pounds. So he was the first to have this proclamation. And then the second one was Governor Cornwallis. Notice Governor Shirley, Governor Lawrence was the second, and he also adopted the scalping proclamations in 1744 and 1752, and then last one by Cornwallis was 1756. But all of these scalping proclamations were designed to ensure that we remove the Wabanakis from the traditional territories so we can have settlement on those territories. As a matter of fact, the last proclamation that was issued by Cornwallis, it's still in effect today. If you went to Nova Scotia, the Legislative Assembly in Nova Scotia, that proclamation is still in the books. It's still legal to take scalps of Mi'kmaq people and of course Wolastoq in that area. And of course the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia, they're trying to get the federal government to remove that scalping proclamation from the books. But the government doesn't want to touch it because they're thinking about, if we don't mention it, nobody will know. If we don't mention that, then we can just let's just forget about that, you know. But the Mi'kmaq are still insisting that this scalping proclamation will be removed from the legal system of Canadian society. So we'll move on. It was also during this time, because of land alienation, and then of course at that time also the English were just coming to conflict with the revolutionaries in the US. So there was going to be a war between the English and the revolutionaries. Now the English were very concerned that if the Wabanakis got involved in this war, if they sided with the revolutionaries, then we definitely will lose. So it was that time when the English colonial authorities went to the Wabanakis and said, look, if you stay neutral in this war with the revolutionaries, what we will do is sign treaties. We will sign treaties, and we will, in those documents, peace and friendship treaties, in those documents, we will recognize your right to hunt, your right to fish, your right to land, and your right for farming, so that we can have ceremonies, your right to your language, your right to your religion, like that time spirituality was the foundation of our religion. So I can just imagine my ancestors saying, well, no, we've been practicing those rights all of our lives. There must have been some debate among Wabanaki nations, among themselves, saying, well, why should we sign this agreement? Because before contact, we exercise those rights. But then I would imagine they would have been saying at the time, well, if we don't sign the document, then we may lose everything. We're losing our land now. So we may lose our right to hunt. We may lose our right to fish and so on. So they finally agreed. And I, for one, as a Wolastoq, appreciate my ancestors coming to that decision to sign those peace and friendship treaties. We have those rights today. And of course, as you know, those rights are recognized in the Supreme Court of Canada. So I appreciate the fact that they have the foresight to protect our rights for the current generation. And I tell the young people today that now it's our responsibility to ensure that the seventh generation, the future generations, will have the same rights as we have today, the same rights that our ancestors had during the age of independence and age of reciprocity, and of course the age of destruction. So we have those treaties now. As a matter of fact, October 28th, 29th, and 30th, the next couple of weeks, we have a peace and friendship treaty days at UNB, and we're going to be discussing those peace and friendship treaties, and we're also going to be looking at the concept reconciliation. How does reconciliation fit? What does it look like in the context of peace and friendship treaties that were signed by our ancestors and your ancestors as well? We're all treaty people. It isn't just the Wabanakis. Your ancestors signed those treaties as well. So you are treaty people as well. So look, in that framework, what can we do to ensure that we have reconciliation in New Brunswick society, knowing that there is those peace and friendship treaties? What can we do as all treaty people to start discussing the responsibilities of those responsibilities that come about as a result of those treaties? So if you're in town on those 3 days, hopefully you'll have a chance to come and stop by, listen to the presentations on the peace and friendship treaties. And because as Imelda mentioned, we also want to do what's the word? We want to bring in English colonial authorities.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what's
We're
the word?
doing we're doing
Oh, God, what's it? It must be a neighbor.
no, we're doing a reenactment.
Reenactment.
We're
thank
gonna
you.
do a
Yeah,
reenactment
yes.
of it, and so
Yes.
we've got the faculty of law students that will do doing a reenactment. So right now I'm looking for period costumes
Yes,
and
yeah.
stuff to be able to do that. And then there'll be a sweat lodge.
Yeah.
We're offering a sweat lodge. The Delta Hotel at the Delta Fredericton has been really, really supportive in that. And David and I did a session for the Delta Hotel a few years ago for their executive team. And they were asking questions like, how can we, as a hospitality industry, be conscious of Wolastoq territory? So what we did is we asked them to commission a wampum belt. So they we just unveiled it at the first of the month, October. It's a big, beautiful wampum belt. It was made by a Mi'kmaq woman by the name of
Patricia Barlow Arcaro.
Caro.
Yeah.
And it's peace and hospitality. So it has the Delta logo in the center, but over here it has the 4 communities of Wolastoq, Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscots on it. And they had it framed, and it's in their lobby. And so what we've asked them to do is not just to show symbolism of our good relationships or our good friendship, is to host a sweat lodge for the guests that will be coming for the conference. And so we'll be actually doing a sweat lodge at the Delta and stuff in there, by the river. And we'll be doing a sweat lodge there to give people an experience of what would have been done back then, to make sure that ceremony was part of that agreement and stuff.
We want to ensure that people know that in the signing of peace and friendship treaties, it wasn't just a matter of signing a document. As I mentioned, it was a ceremony to it. The belief was that these are sacred agreements. These are sacred commitments to one another. And also, our ancestors believed that when you sign a treaty, when you sign an agreement, when you have an agreement with other people, you're adding that group of people into your own family. So when you signed, when your ancestors signed, and my ancestors signed, then you were brought into the Wabanaki family. And then, of course, for the British at the time, they had the documents, and then they went back and went back to the king or the queen, and then this was made official. For my ancestors, after they agreed to the peace and friendship treaty conditions, they went back to their nations, and then they would have a pipe ceremony, and the process of ratification, the process of approval was through the pipe ceremony, because of the spirituality, because of the sacredness of those commitments and that arrangement that was made between the 2 parties. In this case, there was 4 Wabanaki nations and the English crown. So those peace and friendship treaties are, from our point of view, are considered to be adding on the English into our family, into the Wabanaki family. So that's why you're all brothers and sisters. That's why you're all treaty people as well, and not